You want answers?
I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore.
You want answers?
You have offended my family.
I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth.
And you have offended the Shaolin Temple.
You can't handle the truth.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
Radical Rant.
All right, folks, today on the social media network Reddit, Kevin Sabet participated in an AMA, which is something they call an Ask Me Anything. And I got the website up in the chat room if you want to check it out for yourself and read along, because I missed it when it was live, but I'm actually glad I did, because it would have just... it just made me angry, and who needs to get angry that early in the morning? But it allowed me to add my comments after the AMA. So I went in and responded to every single point he tried to make. And it's very interesting, especially some of the things other people had to say. The very top point that you'll see from Drug War Throwaway is, how do you deal with the fact that a majority of U.S. citizens do not agree with you? Thanks. P.S. Why are all the positive reviews of your book from reviewers with only one review on Amazon? Shady. And then that's followed up by, not to mention the majority of answered questions so far being from zero-day accounts asking questions that pander to his favorite talking points. So I don't know how much debunking I really need to do. It seems like a lot of the folks on Reddit are pretty smart and have figured things out on their own. But there were some points I did definitely want to get to. A Redditor named A Polite asked, do you have a concern that the prohibition itself may be more harmful than the actual marijuana consumption? And Kevin answers, all policies have pros and cons. Prohibition isn't great, but legalization would be worse for the reasons I outline in Reefer Sanity. You know, got to pimp the book, and hey, that's fine. Promote your book, right? So we're better off being the world's largest jailer per capita and overall of all human history, with half the people there for drug-related offenses. And that's better than a legal regulated market in marijuana and the decriminalization of possession of other drugs. See, the problem with people asking these questions of Kevin is you got to ask them in such a way that make them a little harder for him to dodge. I would have asked it like this. Can you explain to us how prohibition of marijuana is better than its legalization, but legalization of alcohol is better than its prohibition? See, we had this experience back in 1920 through 1933, where we, to save the children, banned alcohol. We saw how that turned out. Let's go to another question. A person named MS Deck asked, is it fair to say that the middle ground Project Sam is seeking when it comes to cannabis still includes the use of SWAT teams, courts, and a lifelong criminal record? If it is not fair, could you please explain in detail how it is not? Well, Kevin comes back to answer that, saying, we talk about how we are not in favor of permanent criminal records for marijuana smokers at learnaboutsam.org. But then he follows that with, SWAT teams would be a case-by-case thing. We're not experts on law enforcement practices, but I would hope there would be a general sense of only using SWAT practices in the most egregious of cases. See, this is what you got to do with Kevin Sabet. Don't get away from the marijuana use. Get to the marijuana market, because that's what he doesn't have an answer for. Everything on that Project Sam still maintains criminal penalties, interdiction, SWAT teams, eradication, invasion, forfeiture, and long prison terms for people who grow and sell pot. He can't get away from that. SWAT teams would be a case-by-case thing. Because some people who grow pot still need to have armed thugs burst through the door and shoot their dogs and terrorize their families. Kevin continues by saying, remember, despite what is often described, people are not in court for just smoking pot. Usually a court appearance entails pot and other things, driving recklessly maybe, or a probation violation. We'll get back to that one. Another question, SJ 1989 wanted to know, how does the revenue that could be potentially raised by taxing and regulating marijuana compare to the societal costs associated with marijuana use? Taxation versus the cost. Well, this is the old Sabet conjecture. Kevin Sabet says, well, that's a question many legislators are looking at right now because it's attractive. Tax pot people are using, and we can make money from it. We've never legalized marijuana, so everything anyone says about what exact costs will be have to be taken with that in mind. But when we look at alcohol and tobacco, two legal addictive drugs, we know that for every $1 in revenue they bring in, they cost at least $10 in social costs. Now, there was a lot of people who responded to that one saying, wait a minute, you're talking about alcohol and tobacco, which are dangerous and addictive and have great societal costs, and you're trying to compare it to marijuana, which is far safer, far less addictive. It's apples and oranges comparison. So I congratulate so many Redditors out there for pouncing on that part of it. But here's the part I always like to point out. This was my answer. Here's your solution now. Tell us what marijuana costs now to society. It's not like legalization invents marijuana. There's 27 million people smoking it right now every year. So what does that cost? What does it cost? Because right now, we're taking in zero tax dollars to offset it. And we're spending billions of dollars in a futile attempt to stop it. So tell us what the current cost is, Kevin. Whatever that current cost is, let's call it X. Now, hazard a guess as to how much percentage use will go up when it's legal. 3%, 5%, 10%, 25%. I don't care. Call that Y percent, right? All right. So your cost when legal will be X plus X times Y percent. We'll know what that cost can be. Then you have to subtract from that equation however much we're spending in prohibition costs that wouldn't continue as enforcement costs. Let's call that Z. So all you need to do is set the pot tax P equal to what the costs are. P equals X plus X times Y percent minus Z. Problem solved. Just tell us what it costs now. But he never will. He'll never try to quantify what the costs to marijuana to society are now, because then people would see how much lower they are compared to alcohol and tobacco. People would see an actual number instead of being frightened by the boogeyman of costs. Nameless, shapeless, mysterious costs that we would suffer. Another person who was calling Sabet on that whole comparing alcohol and tobacco to marijuana said, why do you choose to compare the cost of legalizing cannabis to legal tobacco and alcohol? The latter are known to be addictive and very unhealthy, while there is very little to show that the same is true for cannabis. A more apt comparison would be to compare it to something like caffeine, which is a legal drug that is used just as much as tobacco and alcohol, but doesn't have the societal cost you use to promote your anti-legalization agenda. And Kevin's answer to that was that the dangers of all these drugs are different. Sounds like the National Institutes of Drug Abuse, right? We can't say alcohol or marijuana is less toxic because, they both cause harm. He says the dangers of all these drugs are different. For instance, cigarettes don't cause car crashes, but marijuana and alcohol do. I beg to differ. I know a lot of people I don't know a lot of people, but I can imagine that trying to light a cigarette is distracting. Dropping a cigarette cherry into your lap might cause you to swerve. He also says marijuana and cigarettes don't lead to violent behavior, but alcohol does. Caffeine does not stunt your cognitive development, whereas alcohol and marijuana both can. I'm comparing marijuana to alcohol and tobacco because those are an example of two legal drugs. Alcohol and marijuana have similar addiction chance profiles, but they and heroin are both less than the addiction chance for tobacco. No, alcohol and marijuana do not have similar addiction chance profiles. 9% according to NIDA, 15% for alcohol. 9% for marijuana, 15% for alcohol. And if you're addicted to marijuana, addicted, square quotes, and you suddenly stop using marijuana, you will not die. But if you are addicted to alcohol and you suddenly quit it, you can die. As a son of an alcoholic, I am personally offended whenever you try to compare marijuana and alcohol, Kevin. All right, let's get to another of his points. Let's see. Wings Fan 101 said, most people who smoke don't get addicted. What's the big deal? I'm an average student in college and smoke weekly or bi-weekly. I don't see it really affecting my life. And Kevin comes back to say, I don't think everyone who smokes pot needs treatment. In fact, we know that most people who use any drug stop after 1 to 3 times, and most of the others can stop without treatment. So why are you promoting this idea that marijuana needs to stay illegal and the people who are caught with it need to be screened for potential treatment. I do not see you advocating that for alcohol. We need to potentially screen anyone we catch with a beer on the chance they might be an alcoholic, and screen them and make sure that if they are, according to the screener, likely to be an alcoholic, that they're forced into alcohol rehab where they have to take pee tests to see whether or not they're drinking. They have to go to that rehab or they can go to jail. Until you are proposing that for alcoholics, quit trying to save the marijuana, scare quotes, addicts. Oh my God. Here's the thing. He continues to say, the minority of users who do get addicted have lots of problems. They cost society in terms of accidents, workplace costs, health costs, incur costs to themselves, poorer educational attainment, etc. Again, in a world that is tolerating alcoholics in the workplace, in a world that allows nicotine addicts to get a fix every 15 minutes, twice an hour, and sometimes even pays for the facility for them to do it in so they don't get rained on, I refuse to accept that there is a need to prevent potential workplace health costs and whatever from my pot smoking if you're going to let the alcoholics and nicotine addicts get away with it. If you want to have a standard in this country that we got to save people from themselves to benefit capitalism, then you need to start applying it to the real sources, the alcoholics, the smokers, the prescription drug addicts. Pot smokers and coffee drinkers would be very low on your list. But no, there's too many drinkers and there's too many smokers. And they have big industries that have lobbies that would fight against that stuff. And marijuana doesn't to the most extent. So like any good bully, you're picking on the ones that can't defend themselves as well. Let's see. Kevin was asked about the rescheduling of marijuana for cancer, epilepsy, PTSD. And he says, marijuana has medical value, but that does not mean raw marijuana is medicine. We need to derive products based on marijuana, like whole extracts with CBD as the main ingredient, versus allowing smoked marijuana. Okay, folks. Now we get to the heart of the matter. And the heart of the matter is that this is all a defense for the paradigm of synthetic, processed, patentable, marked up pharmaceutical medications. It's the idea that a plant can't possibly be medicine, but the stuff in it that we can extract and patent and sell at a markup is medicine. And you will find throughout Kevin Sabet's rhetoric, everywhere he goes, that the whole point of this is to stop the plant. People can't use a plant. Think about what he says here. Marijuana has medical value, but that does not mean raw marijuana is medicine. We need to derive products based on marijuana, like whole extracts with CBD as the main ingredient, versus allowing smoked marijuana. Oranges have a nutritional value, but that does not mean raw oranges are beneficial. We need to derive products based on oranges, like whole juices or vitamin C pills, versus allowing eaten oranges. This, I don't know how much more I can express how this is the core of the argument. It's to fight the plant. When Kevin says medicine, he doesn't mean substance that aids healing. He means substance approved by the FDA that is standardized and patented. That is the core to this. And when we go further down into another one of his answers here, he talks about how people shouldn't be, he's long time talked about not allowing the smoked marijuana. That's always been one of his things. We can't have smoked marijuana. But further down in this AMA, I'm trying to get to the bottom of it here, he actually goes ahead and says that we should not allow, oh, here it is. He talks about Connecticut. Someone asked about Connecticut's medical marijuana law. What is the most important piece of any regulation for medical marijuana? This is asked for Kevin. And Kevin says, keep it for cancer, MS, AIDS, and epileptic patients only. And have it be non-smoked. No need to smoke, vape, or eat it. That shows you right there that his entire point here is you can't have the plant. You just can't have the plant. Previously, it was always about smoked marijuana, how bad the smoke is. Smoke is bad for your lungs. No medicine is smoked. And then we came forth and said, okay, yeah, all right. Sure. How about vaporization? How about we vaporize the bud, vaporize the oil, vaporize it so that it is heated to the point of the vapors, the medically beneficial cannabinoids, being able to be inhaled with its rapid dose delivery and self-titration without any of that harmful, pesky smoke you have a problem with. Oh, now suddenly it's not the smoke. Now it's the smoking or vaporizing that's a problem. Yeah, somehow he wants to keep it for the cancer and AIDS patients. The cancer and AIDS patients who may be puking violently, either from chemotherapy or their cachexia. And rather than allowing them to vaporize and take an immediate hit and get immediate reaction and immediate relief from their nausea, he expects them to take some sort of pill or extract, swallow it, not vomit it back up for 40 minutes, and then hope they took enough to work, lest they have to take another pill and wait another 40 minutes and not vomit again while they're severely nauseous. I encourage you to check out this Reddit AMA because it is fascinating as hell, some of the things Kevin Sabet has to say. I encourage you to check it all out. There's more in there about, oh no, big tobacco and advertising. I've got a piece on hightimes.com right now about that angle. I encourage you to check that out as well. Whew, that's all the time we got for today. For Brian the Red, I'm Radical Russ. Thanks for joining us. And until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.